So I recently watched this new podcast by the neuroscientist Andrew Huberman about optimal protocols for studying and learning. And this podcast is very, very interesting because for the past 10 years, I've really been working hard to optimize how well I study, how well I learn, so that I can get straight A's. But also I like to learn outside of school. I have a Kindle, I literally love to learn. But this podcast blew my mind because it gave me a bunch of new insights on learning and how to learn effectively. Some things I kind of knew unconsciously and I was doing. Some new things that I've never heard before. So I'm going to summarize in this video, this podcast. Because Andrew Huberman, he's a legend. He talks a lot about science. He's, well educated. But anyway, so what I'm going to talk about in this video, first of all, I'm going to tell you really quick what learning is. Then I'm going to tell you the 2 things required to learn and study effectively. And then I'm going to give you the 5 habits of high-performing students. And then finally, I'm going to tell you a study technique or a study approach, this blew my mind when I first heard about this. It is so effective. It's literally so effective. It offsets forgetting by up to 50%. And most students never do this. They can approach studying in a completely wrong way. So let's get into it. So, okay, real quick, first link in the description or second link, join my Discord server. I'm active in there all the time. I want to see you in there. Okay, so real quick in this video. Okay, so what exactly is learning? This is very, very interesting to know. So learning, people think of learning as like, I'm a visual learner, I'm an auditory learner, I'm a, kinesthetic learner. I learn best by like punching the air or whatever. Learning styles, right? Apparently this is cap. Not really fully cap, but apparently this is actually not completely true. Most people study and learn in a pretty similar way. So this was interesting when I first heard about it. Learning is not about retaining information. It's not about like holding on to what you're learning. Learning is about offsetting forgetting. So when you look at something for the first time, you're going to know it, right? But then over time, you're going to forget it. What learning actually is stopping that process of forgetting. So that's what this video is going to be about. It's going to be about how not to forget. So what exactly is learning? Basically, in our body, we have a nervous system, right? A bunch of nerves that go everywhere. Our brain is a part of our nervous system. Our muscles are a part of our nervous system. And when we learn, these nerves literally change and shift. It's called neuroplasticity because our body, our nervous system literally changes as we learn. So the process of learning is about changing our nervous system. And here's the very, very interesting thing. It's a very fundamental rule of learning. Learning is meant to be effortful. It's meant to be slightly difficult. Because think about it, you're literally shifting and changing your nervous system. That takes effort, that takes friction. So a general rule is the best learning techniques, the best learning approaches are gonna be slightly effortful, slightly difficult. And this is what I really, really hate about YouTubers, study TikTokers or whatever. Telling people that learning is effortful. Like I always say in my videos, you have to focus really hard when you study. Make sure you do deep work, test yourself or whatever. This is not the sexy answer because people want to hear, top 5 quick tips to instantly get straight A's. This is what people want to click on. This is what people are interested in because people are lazy. People want the quick way to study. That's why these study YouTubers bait you by giving you these quick fixes. But what I learned from this podcast is that hard studying, learning is meant to be effortful. It's meant to take friction. So forget about the quick fix to studying well and get used to it. It's going to be effortful. It's going to be difficult. I'm going to tell you how it is. It's not the sexy answer, but it's the thing that will get you the good grades. So let's get right into it. The 2 steps to learn what is required. So there's 2 things required. The first thing is focus, and the second thing is sleep. Now, you're going to probably want to skip this part. You're going to be like, oh, give me the quick tips, give me the tactics, but let me give you some tips here to improve your focus. So basically, I always talk about this in all my videos, focus, but it's 100% true. You have to be actively engaged with the material to learn. Because when you're focusing, you're telling your neurons, hey bro, it's time to change. It's time to modify yourselves because we've got some new shit we're learning here. So I'm going to talk about focus really quick here because I talk about focus all the time in my videos. I'll give you some new things here. But focus is all about bringing your attention back to the materials. So you're studying, you're reading, you're watching a lecture. Focus is literally just about bringing your attention back. And that's why it's painful, it's effortful, because bringing your attention back is hard because your mind constantly wants to distract you with random bullshit. So focus is about being alert, being attentive, focusing on the material. So here's a tip that I found very interesting in this video that I actually do. A lot of focusing is about how you talk to yourself in your brain. So if you're literally telling yourself, okay, this information I'm learning here, this thing I'm reading is so important, I need to learn this, I need to know this, your brain's going to start paying attention. But how do most students talk to themselves? They're like, oh bro, I gotta do this, I can't wait to go play basketball later, I can't believe I have to study, this is so painful. This is the opposite of focus. Your brain is going to focus away from the material because you don't want to do it. So you need to talk to yourself like a coach. You need to hype yourself up. This isn't in the podcast, but this is what I personally do. You need to hype yourself up. You need to be like, okay, the shit I'm learning is so important. I need to know this. Let's pay attention, bro. Me personally, I hype myself up. I'm like, okay, let's go, boys. Let's learn about the Taylor series. Let's go. And I get hyped. You talk to yourself in your brain and you're more likely to focus. You're going to take this shit seriously. So a quick tip here on how to improve your focus that he talks about in this video. A tactic you can use to train your focus every single day is 5 to 10 minutes of meditation. Now the reason for this is because meditation is essentially a refocusing exercise. For example, let's say you focus on your breath. Every time what meditation is you sit down, an example of meditation, you sit down and you literally just focus on your breath. Now every time you focus on your breath, you're going to get random thoughts. And when you get those random thoughts, you simply bring your focus back to your breath. What this does is it trains your focus system to bring your attention back to your breath. Now there's many benefits of meditation, there's many approaches to it. I won't get into it too much in this video, but what he says is 5 to 10 minutes of meditation a day will literally blow up your ability to focus. So this is one of the many benefits of meditation. Okay, so yeah, that's the first thing, alertness, focus. You want to be alert on the material you're learning. And the second thing to learning is sleep. You're going to want to skip this and you're going to think like, oh, forget about sleep, bro, I don't give a shit about that. Most students, they want to do all-nighters. But sleep is essential because deep sleep, specifically REM, rapid eye movement sleep, is when your neurons actually change and the learning happens. When you sit down and you study, that's not when the learning happens. The learning happens at night when you're sleeping and your neurons are being rewired. This is the problem with all-nighters. When you do an all-nighter, your neurons don't have a chance to rewire. So you're not actually learning the material on a deep level. So this is why I think, a lot of the time all-nighters are completely pointless. Avoid them as much as possible. I think in university I did one all-nighter, I remember, for an assignment, but I don't think I did any more than one all-nighter. I think I did one, maybe two max all-nighters. I almost never did them because you can 100% avoid them. Maybe I'll talk about it in other videos. Here's something mind-blowing I want to tell you. You don't necessarily have to sleep. This is what I learned from this podcast, but I kind of already knew this. You don't necessarily need to sleep to get those neurons to rewire to learn. You can do something called non-sleep deep rest. You can access those deep sleep states without actually sleeping. Now this is mind-blowing. There's this practice called NSDR, non-sleep deep rest. If you've never done this before, it's gonna blow your mind. It's gonna feel like you've slept for like a couple hours and you're not even gonna go to sleep. So what you do is you lie down in your bed and you listen to a script, search it up on YouTube, NSDR. You listen to this script and it puts you into this kind of like sleep-like state where your body is fully asleep and maybe your brain is asleep. I'm not 100% sure. But it allows you to feel alert and rested. It feels like you're napping, but you're not actually taking a nap. And during these NSDR rests, learning also takes place. I actually do this most days, NSDR. So if you've never heard of it, I highly recommend you do it. It will boost your energy in the middle of the day if you're tired, and it will help you with learning, as I heard from this video. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about the 5 habits of these 700 medical students that they interviewed. They all had very similar habits when it came to studying, and I realized that I did these as well. So I talk about a lot of these habits in my videos, so I'm going to talk about it very briefly, and then I'm going to tell you about that study technique that is mind-blowing when I learned about it. So the first thing is, all these students they interviewed only studied about 3 to 4 hours a day maximum. And I 100% agree with this. I study honestly about 2, maybe 3 hours a day maximum. So these students have really learned to focus and really do deep work and learn effectively. If you want to learn more about how to focus really intensely and do deep work, go watch my video on how to build a deep work habit, or go watch my video how I study 2 hours a day. But the first habit that these students do is they set aside time every single day to study. Now I know it sounds obvious, but they literally schedule into their calendar when they're going to study. They know exactly when during the day their brain is most alert. For example, for me, it's late at night and early in the morning. They will literally schedule the time that they're going to study, and they will make it an effort to actually study during that time. Now I know it sounds obvious, but this is because focus this is very interesting, focus is a finite but renewable resource. So when you focus, it's gonna run out throughout the day. Students, they study all day, but the reality is focus runs out, it drains. It's like your stamina, you can't run forever. Same thing with focus, you can't focus forever. So focus will run out. So these students, they set aside time to study and they don't aim to study all day because they know their focus is going to be drained. So they work on using their focus as effectively as possible. They study at the times of the day that their brain is most efficient, and they study deeply and effectively. Now, the second habit of these students that they interviewed is they have zero distractions. They turn away their phone, they message their family telling them, hey bro, hey mom, I can't be contacted for 2 hours, I'm going to study. They isolate themselves. They study in an area with no distractions. I work right here because there's no shit going on in my peripheral vision. There's nothing to disturb me. I'll message people and I'll say like, hey, I can't talk for a couple hours. Isolate yourself, go into your bat cave. And the third habit, this is very interesting, they study consistently. So what do I mean by this? Most students, they will study when a deadline is approaching, or they'll do like 10 hours on the weekend before their homework is due. What these effective students did was they spread their study out throughout the week. They studied at least 5 days a week, but they made sure to study consistently throughout the week rather than patching it all into one day. This is partly to do with offsetting forgetting, because if you're studying every single day, you're reminding yourself of the material, you're not going to forget it as easily. If you study for like 20 hours on one day, on Sunday for example, you're going to forget all that material, your focus is going to run out. It's much better to spread that work out throughout the week. And now the fourth habit of effective students, this was very interesting actually. They teach the material to their fellow students. Now this is something that I really like to do in high school. I really like to talk to my friends in school and teach them the material that they didn't understand. The reason I love making YouTube videos, one of the reasons I started this YouTube channel is because I love to teach. I love to explain things in my own way of understanding, and I love that feeling when people are understanding my teachings. So what highly effective students do is they teach the material to their friends. Now, I was talking to the people in my Discord server about this, but some of us, we like to teach ourselves as well, and this is also super effective. I love to talk to myself. Maybe I'm crazy, but I love to talk to myself and explain the material out loud. If I'm learning something, I'll just speak it out loud and I'll pretend I'm teaching someone, but really it's just my inner dialogue being let out into the world. I don't know what I'm talking about right now. But for example, these YouTube videos, to be honest, this is how I talk to myself. All I'm doing is I'm simply clicking record and recording me talking to myself. So yeah, teaching is an effective way to see your gaps in your knowledge and make sure that you really understand the material and you're not just memorizing shit. So the final thing to do with these effective students, they all have deep motivations for studying. So what I realized about the majority of students is the reason they study is because they have to, because they're supposed to study. It's like, oh, my teacher told me to do this homework, oh, my parents want me to study to get good grades. They don't have a deep inner reason to study. Their motivation for studying is out there. It's like, oh, my parents told me, oh, my teachers told me. But all these effective students, they had a deep reason, a motivation to study and do well. Maybe it's because they wanted to get a really good job. Maybe it's because they knew how their grades would affect their family in the future. Maybe they just love to learn the material. For me, that was one of my biggest motivations. I love to learn the material. So where you get your motivation is, you got to find your motivation basically. And this is why it's good to let people coach you and help you find your motivations for studying, or find it on your own. Just take some time to think and ask yourself, why am I studying? What is it I want in my life? I won't talk too much about this. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you about the most effective technique approach to studying. And I realized I kind of do this on my own, but I don't do it as much as I should. And this blew my mind because most students don't do this. So the most effective method. Okay, first I'm going to tell you about the study that they did. So they had a couple groups of students. One group of students, they had them study the material 4 times. The next group of students, they had them study the material 3 times and then take a test. And the third group of students, they had them study the material once and take 3 tests. And which group of students do you think did the best? It was that group of students who studied the material once and took 3 tests. Now this is absolutely mind-blowing. What this means is that testing is actually the most effective method to learn. And what he said in this video was that testing offsets forgetting by up to 50%. If you test yourself immediately after you learn the material, it offsets forgetting by up to 50%. And this is crazy because it doesn't seem like it. Because if you study and you take a test and you get like everything wrong, that's actually still very good. You're actually still learning. But it destroys your confidence. It makes you feel like, oh bro, I don't know this material at all. Compare that to how most students do it. They study the material and then they study it again and again and again and again. And it makes them feel more confident the more they study the material. But what they found with this study is that actually the better approach is to test yourself more. So even though testing destroys your confidence, it's actually much better for learning. And if you study the material over and over and over again, it gives you this false sense of confidence. So I remember in my first year of university, I was doing Calculus 2. And I did all the past papers, I was hyped, I was ready for the test. And I had this friend who spent way more time studying the material than me. But his approach, I knew he was screwed for the exam, because his approach to studying calculus was to just go over the lectures over and over and over again. And he knew the material really, really well. He went over the lectures over and over and over again. But he ended up failing the subject. And the reason for that, I realize now, is because he never tested himself on the material. He never did past papers. Yeah, going over the material again and again gives you this false sense of confidence, because there's a difference between familiarity and mastery. Mastery is when you truly have like a grasp of the concepts and you can really use them well, while familiarity is simply recognizing the material and being able to see it from a distance. That's why don't test yourself with multiple choice questions, because multiple choice questions test your familiarity. You want to test your active recall, your ability to actually bring the material up and answer open-ended questions. So how exactly do you test yourself? Okay, past papers, that's one way. I always talk about in my videos to do a fuck ton of past papers, to spam past papers. Because when you test yourself, that's when the learning actually happens. But you don't just have to do past papers. You can also test yourself in your own mind. So ideally, you want to do this as soon as possible after you learn the material. So what I personally do is I'll sit down, I'll read like a chunk of the textbook, for example, and when I start to feel like, okay, I'm learning a lot here, let's see what I've learned, I'll kind of go back and I'll summarize the material in my own kind of understanding. I don't know how to explain it, but I'll have like a visual going on in my mind where I'll like try to like see if I understand the concepts, and I'll look for like the gaps in my knowledge. So for example, I'll learn about, I was studying engineering. For example, I was learning about some kind of like engineering protocol, for example, and I'll read over that. I'll be alert. I'll focus on it. I'll learn it, and then afterwards, I'll kind of test myself. I'll be like, okay, do I understand this whole process? I'll go through every step, and I'll look for the gaps in my knowledge, and I'll search it up, and I'll learn it. So I do that. Test yourself in your own mind. Make sure you understand it, and also, do past papers, do questions. So testing yourself is literally the most effective thing possible. Like he showed in this study, it's better to study the material once and then test yourself over and over again than it is to just keep going over the material. Even if you're getting answers wrong, getting an answer wrong signals to your nervous system that we need to learn this shit, we need to remember this shit. So even if you're getting questions wrong when you're testing yourself, that's completely fine, you're still learning. It might tank your confidence, but you need to understand that it's actually helping you, so don't let it tank your confidence. Failure mistakes are where the real learning happens. Okay, now I'm going to give you two more quick insights, tips here that are very, very interesting that I found. One thing is called, I can't remember what it was called. I think it's called the gap effect. Basically, if you learn something, say for example, you read a chapter of a book or something, and you simply pause for 5 to 30 seconds, your brain is quickly reviewing that material faster than if you were just learning it. So how do we use this effectively? This was mind-blowing when I first learned about this, because apparently if you're reading something, learning something, and you simply pause for 5 to 30 seconds, don't check your phone, don't do that random bullshit, just sit and do nothing for 5 to 30 seconds, your brain in the background, specifically your hippocampus, will actually be reviewing the material. So how do we use this effectively? I realize I actually do this kind of naturally when I read. When I'm reading a book, I would just kind of pause every now and then and just sit there and let my brain go over the material of what I just learned, rather than plowing through and reading. So how do you use this effectively? Every now and then, just stop and just sit there for 5 to 30 seconds and let your brain review what you just learned. Okay, and the second tip that's very, very interesting that I want to tell you is learning is connected to emotions. Now this is actually going to be pretty obvious when you think about it. Let's say this is pretty sad. Let's say you see a car crash happen. You are going to remember that very, very vividly because it put you in a state of like fear. It heightened your emotions. So actually, if you heighten your emotions, you're much more likely to learn. A very, very good example of this is if you're excited, you're super, super hyped and interested about the material you're learning. Maybe you're super curious about what you're learning, or maybe you've got a teacher who's really, really good and he explains the material very, very well. So if you're excited, your emotions are very, very high and you're going to learn much better. So go watch my video, how to actually enjoy studying. I teach you how to get a bit more hyped, a bit more excited about your studies, which will actually help you learn better. But if you don't have a good teacher, a teacher who's not super hype, super, makes the material very exciting, it can be a bit harder to learn because your emotions are going to be lower. But yeah. So I'll leave you on this. If you want to remember what you learned into this video, take a pause after this video and test yourself a little bit. Fly through the material of what I just taught you, summarize it, see where your gaps are, come back to the video and learn those parts again. So yeah, try